Greetings, beloved. As we normally anticipate you getting an e-news with me writing to you, today I decided, as the first of the year, just this one, that you're going to hear from me by way of a direct video from my inner sanctum sanctorum, where I do all my studying and I do all my preparing. As we approach Sunday, I want to remind you it's Epiphany Sunday. It's the Sunday when we celebrate the arrival of the wise men from the Persian Empire to worship Christ with Mary and Joseph present, and to bring him what's equivalent to a king's ransom. What they lay at his feet, the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh, not just some little trinket. They lay at his feet what's worthy of a king. Leonard Sweet and many others argue that what they lay at his feet enables him, by way of their survival in Egypt, their return to Bethlehem, and even perhaps the financing of much of his life and his ministry, to facilitate what God intended to do through him and for him. And the thing about the story, as you know, is that the wise men followed a star. Now, there are those that claim that the wise men were Zoroastrians. They were followers of Zoroaster. Zoroastrianism was one of the early monotheistic religions. So it had a great deal in common with Judaism, with the Hebrew faith. And they were seekers of truth. And some suggest that when Balaam, the false prophet, who happens to prophesy amazing things about the nation of Israel and their future, says, "I have seen his star in the east," some want to make the connection between the star they were tracking was this one that was prophesied by the false prophet of all things, Balaam. And the argument would be the truth pervades all things. God is going to have his way no matter what. Now, the fact that the star didn't follow a predictable path is really important, because there is an actual path the stars take through the heavens. They are so predictable, as a matter of fact, that you wouldn't be able to determine navigation in the sea or planting and harvesting seasons in agriculture if the stars' movements were unpredictable. And so the movement of the stars and the path they take determine the days, the times, the seasons, and the years by which we live. So the movement of the stars is what ultimately governs how many seconds there are in a minute, how many minutes there are in an hour, how many hours there are in a day, how many days there are in a week. And studying this is quite fascinating, because the Presbyterian theologian, James B. Jordan, makes the argument that when you look at the story in Genesis, when God invites Abram, who can't figure out how God's going to give him a multitude when his wife is barren and when he's getting beyond years, and he says, "Come outside your tent because you're looking up at a canvas that is limiting your vision, and look up at my tent and count the stars." And James Jordan argues that in the Hebrew that can be read, "count down the stars." And the counting down of the stars is different than simply trying to count all those stars. It is picking all the key 12 constellations and the key stars in those constellations and marking how long it takes for them to get that back to the same place in their orbit in the night sky within the completion of the seasons and the cycles of summer, autumn, winter, and spring. And he would argue that when you look at the numbers of the tribes in the book of Numbers and you take off the zeros for all the thousands, you end up discovering how long each of the tribes, which represent the 12 constellations by which they had their own banner, the story of the gospel in the heavens, by the time they all get back to the same place in the sky, you will have the numbering of the 12 tribes. Fascinating study. It's speculative, but it is fascinating, and I respect the scholarship of Dr. James B. Jordan. And I just find all that really fascinating. However, the movement of the stars is predictable. So this particular star that they're following is not predictable at all. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. It doesn't travel the normal pathway of the stars in the sky, which implies this is not a normal, predictable star, which is why most scholars and most experts will tell you that this is more than likely a divine manifestation of some sort, either a theophany or perhaps an angelic sort of an appearance, and that when God sees that he has the attention of the Magi, there is movement in an unpredictable way towards a promise giver that can change the way they move from there on out. So two things I want you to understand. We're in a season, and we've begun the new year in Advent. We are in a season of anticipation, expectation, and intention. And intention is tied to the divine intention, the divine love that wills our highest and our best, the divine love that wants us to flourish and not to languish. And I want you to expect, as we come to celebrate the Lord on Sunday, as we come to celebrate and mark the Epiphany, when the star appeared, that we are coming to a God who invites us to expect the unexpected. If you don't expect the unexpected, you'll miss it when it shows up. But the thing about the unexpected is you can't predict it because it's not predictable, it's simply promised. The future is not a prediction, it's a promise. And I just wonder if a bunch of us are going to be surprised in the coming months as God begins to bring to us in unpredictable ways connections, relationships, and gifts. Gifts that are worth a king's ransom. Precious gifts that enable us to accomplish things we could never have accomplished without his assistance. It's going to be an encouraging year of promise and possibility, and a year where you can't predict how the Spirit's going to lead. All you can do is trust his promise. And in the same way that we can assume the star will lead us to Jerusalem, just like the wise men did, thinking obviously the king is going to be in Jerusalem because it's the city of the great king. But sadly, in Jerusalem, there was a false king, a descendant of Esau, an Edomite, not a descendant of David, sitting on that throne. And that false king was threatened by the birth of the actual heir of David's throne. And so God, in his wisdom, allowed the star to disappear when they got there. When they got back on track, the star showed up again. So even in the mistakes we make, as we make them moving forward in faith, God's got us covered. And the good news is that no matter how evil the Herods are in our life, once we bring what we have to bring to Christ, and Christ brings what he wants to bring to us, he always leads us by another way than the way we came. So once again, it's a season of anticipation, expectation, and intention in divine love. And love never fails. Expect the unexpected. It's about to show up at our doorstep.